Hello, this is Angela Bennett from Advice Resolutions, signing in to give you the next instalment of our attendance at the Jedburgh Sheriff Court today. Now, in a particular case in which we are interested, and there is a client who has a criminal defence matter, the client turns up because there is what they call an intermediate hearing here at the Jedburgh Sheriff Court. And it's a process in which defendants, criminal defendants that is, have their cases heard before the sheriff. The sheriffs are in the Scottish jurisdiction as opposed to the judge in the England jurisdiction. So the initial stages was that the defendant asked for assistance through the criminal defence lawyers, and the criminal defence lawyers, they actually say that they will represent anyone regardless of, race, regardless of whether or not you have money or not. But in this particular case, the criminal defence lawyer clearly avoided any contact with this particular black defendant, even though they asked and had the right to ask and had the right to a criminal defence access to a qualified lawyer in the Jedburgh Sheriff Court. So as a result of not receiving that representation to which the defendant is entitled to, the defendant was left without any recourse to criminal defence as a result of the particular barrister advocate who refused to take their case. So in other words, they are left without access to justice, which is a breach obviously of their Article 6 right under the European Convention of Human Rights. So this means that barristers, advocates in the Scottish jurisdiction are permitted to cause race discrimination on the grounds of the person's skin colour, the person's ethnicity, as opposed to access to justice where the person can actually get criminal defence legally by law. Although there is one caveat in that accessing justice can be quite tricky, because in Scotland the Procurator Fiscal is in a fine-tuned situation of receiving 200 million of the legal aid matters, and we could say that their budget is quite high in compared to the criminal defence defendants, who actually only receive 85 million, which is really disparate. So that is something to be considered. So the fallout has to be that the criminal defence side of matters here in the criminal defence system in Scotland means that the defendant won't get, unlikely to get any recourse to defend their case, because they won't have as much opportunity as the Procurator Fiscal has in terms of an inflated budget. So this particular defence advocate, who seems to have the monopoly on the criminal defence, has refused a black defendant, and therefore the black defendant is left without much recourse to criminal defence, which is illegal, because Scotland cannot enact illegal acts against individuals, and they can't overall enact illegal acts under the Scotland Act 1998 section 29. And so therefore we are in a situation where the Procurator Fiscal clearly has the upper hand in all of this. In most cases they probably will, because they are pregnant. They are absolutely pregnant with funding, and they won't release that funding and give it up. Imagine if they gave up the funding and gave half of what they had to the criminal defence. That would kind of balance things out. It would, because it would mean that there would be a level playing field, and that both sides could actually argue that, well, it is fair in terms of the funding you get, but it probably isn't fair in terms of access to solicitors, because solicitors aren't making themselves available in cases in Scotland, because they themselves are saying they don't have any access to a fair pay scheme. And so we're left with rather disparate, rather unfair, and rather illegal actions being taken by judges, particular judges in this Jedburgh Sheriff Court, one namely a Sheriff Peter Patterson, who's allowed to act with impunity, so that he doesn't get arrested, he doesn't get fined, he doesn't get locked up in jail even for a night, even though his actions are very questionable, because he's locked up people in jail in terms of, they've paid a bill, and they've paid a bill, you don't get locked up in jail, do you? So let's see how matters develop, and we shall hope for judicial impropriety to be stopped in its tracks, and that remains to be seen. Okay, signing out. Angela Bennett, Advice Resolutions.